All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're taking a peek behind the curtain at a really fascinating piece of hardware, the Sovereign Sentry Pro. We're going to follow its entire journey, from just a pile of carefully sourced parts to a fully battle-tested piece of infrastructure ready to go out the door.
So, first things first, what even is a Sentry node? The people who make it have this awesome name for it, a civilization in a box. Now, what on earth does that mean? Well, it means we're not just talking about a router or some little server here. This thing is engineered to be the entire digital heart of a small clinic, a farm, or your home office, and it's built to run nonstop, 24/7, without ever complaining.
To really get how they pull this off, we're going to follow its life story through 5 key stages. First, we'll look at the civilization in a box mission. Then, how they source the parts with the white box model. After that, we see how it's built and forged in the flash, and how it's tested in surviving the crucible. And finally, we'll see the quality guarantee they call the Sentry's Promise.
Okay, let's start with Section 1, Civilization in a Box. What is this machine actually designed to do? What's its whole reason for being?
You know, one of the best ways to get what the Sentry is all about is to look at its sibling, the Nomad. The Nomad is built for life on the go. It's rugged, it sips power. The Sentry, though, is the total opposite. It's the anchor. It's the backbone of the network, and its design is all about high availability, raw compute power, and just being an incredibly solid, permanent fixture. So how does it manage all that? Well, this is the magic. It basically takes what would normally be 3 separate physical boxes and packs them into one. It does this using something called a Proxmox hypervisor, which you can think of as a manager that lets you run a bunch of virtual computers on just one piece of hardware. So inside, you get pfSense acting as your super powerful firewall, your gatekeeper. You get Rios Core as the central ledger, and on the Pro models, you even get a Kali Linux machine to act as your auditor. It's a true all-in-one powerhouse.
Okay, so that's the brain, the software. But what about the body? What hardware is this all running on? That takes us to their sourcing strategy, which they call the white box model. And it's a really clever way to get top-tier performance and reliability without, breaking the bank.
And here's the heart of that strategy. They source the big foundational parts, like that fanless aluminum case and the motherboard, from specialized manufacturers in Shenzhen. That gives them scale. But for the stuff that's absolutely critical for performance and a long life, we're talking the RAM and the super-fast NVMe storage, they stick with rock-solid brands like Crucial and Samsung that they get domestically. It's this perfect mix of being cost-smart and totally uncompromising on quality.
So all the parts are in the building. Now it's time to actually build the thing. Welcome to Section 3, Forged in the Flash. And let me tell you, this is not your typical assembly line. It's a very meticulous, hands-on protocol to turn these individual components into a rock-solid Sentry.
The whole journey starts at a station they call the Boneyard. Gotta love that name. So here, before any of the pricey components get added, the bare-bones chassis gets a really thorough inspection. They're looking for any dings, any damage at all. Then it goes through a power-on self-test, a post-test, just to make sure the motherboard is alive and well from the get-go.
Now, of all the physical things they do during assembly, one step is singled out as the absolute most critical. This is the secret sauce that makes sure that 8-core processor can run at full tilt inside that fanless case without, melting.
And here it is. The team completely ignores the stock thermal paste that comes on the heatsink. They pop it off, clean the CPU spotless, and then apply this high-performance Honeywell PTM 7950 phase change pad. This single, careful upgrade is the reason that 8-core CPU doesn't choke and slow down when it's under a heavy, sustained load. It's a tiny detail that has a huge impact on performance.
Okay, once it's physically put together, the unit moves over to the flash station. It gets plugged into an imaging rack, and a master key USB stick kicks off a totally automated script. And this script does everything. It flashes the BIOS with all their custom settings, installs the hypervisor, and then drops in the pre-configured golden image virtual machines. And for the grand finale, it burns a unique, unforgeable identity right onto the hardware's TPM security chip. But it's not done yet, not even close. Now comes the fourth and maybe the most brutal stage of all, surviving the crucible. Every single Sentry has to pass an intense trial by fire to prove it's stable enough to ship. The test itself is simple, but man is it demanding. Each unit goes on a burn-in shelf where its CPU, its RAM, and every single one of its network ports are slammed with a maximum load stress test for a full 24 hours straight.
And throughout that entire torture test, there's one number they are watching like a hawk, the CPU core temperature.
It absolutely cannot go above 85 degrees Celsius. If it even nudges 86, it's an instant fail. The unit is sent right back to the build station to get that thermal pad reapplied. This is the ultimate proof that their most critical upgrade actually worked.
You know, this whole process, it just shows incredible foresight. They've thought about what could go wrong, and they've designed the solutions right into the build process. The risk of overheating, that's what the thermal pad is for. The risk of a user messing up the configuration, they include a rescue drive to do a factory reset. A sudden power outage, the BIOS is already set to automatically reboot. They basically anticipated the points of failure and just designed them out of the equation.
For the hardened units that actually survive the crucible, there's just one final stage left: the Sentry's promise. This is where the final quality control happens to make absolutely sure that the customer gets a perfect product, ready to rock and roll.
I gotta say, I absolutely love this detail. A physical QC checklist is filled out, signed by a technician, and then packed right in every single box. It verifies everything: the visual check, that it passed the thermal stress test, that the right components are in there, and that its secure identity is locked and paired up. It's like a tangible, signed promise of quality.
The very last stop is kitting at the outpost. The chassis gets a final cleaning, and a tamper-evident serial number is applied. The Sentry, its power supply, and all the Pro accessories get carefully boxed up. And then the whole package is sealed with holographic tape, so you know for a fact that it hasn't been opened since it left their workshop.
And that's it. That is the incredibly thorough journey of a Sovereign Sentry Pro, from a concept all the way to a finished product. It's a process that is just obsessed with thermal performance, automation, and security. And it leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. When a single box can be your firewall, your server, and the very core of your network, what does that empower you to build?